The cost of chasing pleasure. Every man wants pleasure. This is not a weakness, it is biology. Your brain is designed to seek what feels good and avoid what feels painful. But the difference between weak men and powerful men is simple. Weak men chase pleasure. Powerful men control it. Because every pleasure in life has a cost. The modern world has made that cost invisible. You can now access pleasure instantly. Unlimited entertainment, unlimited stimulation, unlimited lust. Everything designed to keep your brain comfortable and satisfied in the moment. But there is a hidden trade being made every time a man chooses pleasure over discipline. He is trading his future for a moment. Look at the pattern. A man feels bored, so he reaches for stimulation. He feels stress, so he escapes into entertainment. He feels desire, so he releases that desire immediately. And each time he does this, something subtle happens. His tolerance for discomfort disappears. The moment something becomes difficult, his mind looks for escape. Work becomes harder. Focus becomes shorter. Discipline becomes painful. And slowly, the man begins losing the very qualities required to build something meaningful with his life. Because greatness has always required the same ability. The ability to delay pleasure. The ability to sit with discomfort long enough to create something valuable. Every empire, every invention, every great achievement required a man somewhere who could endure boredom, frustration, and effort without running away. But the modern environment trains men to do the opposite. It trains them to escape the moment discomfort appears. Instead of building resilience, it builds dependence. Dependence on stimulation. Dependence on instant reward. Dependence on pleasure. And over time, this dependence creates a man who cannot sit still long enough to build anything meaningful. This is why so many men today feel stuck. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack opportunity, because they have been trained to chase pleasure instead of purpose. And pleasure, when chased constantly, slowly destroys ambition. It weakens discipline. It dissolves focus. It replaces hunger with comfort. But every man eventually reaches a moment where he begins to see the pattern. He begins to realize that every time he chooses pleasure without control, he pays for it later, in lost focus, lost time, lost potential. This is the hidden cost of chasing pleasure. Most men will never recognize it. But the moment a man sees this clearly, everything begins to change. Nowhere is the cost of pleasure more visible than in lust. Sexual desire is one of the strongest biological drives a man has. It is the force that pushes men to pursue relationships, compete with other men, and build lives that attract attention and admiration. In its natural form, that energy is powerful. It creates ambition. It creates hunger. It creates the restless drive that pushes a man to become something more than he is today. But when that same force is constantly satisfied without effort, something begins to break. Instead of driving a man forward, it begins to drain him. Think about how desire is supposed to work. A man feels attraction. That attraction motivates him to improve himself, to become stronger, more capable, more disciplined. In other words, desire was meant to push men toward growth. But modern life has removed that process. Today, a man can satisfy his impulses instantly. No effort. No self-improvement, no pursuit. And when the strongest biological drive in the human body is constantly satisfied without effort, the mind begins to change. The urgency disappears. The hunger fades. The drive that once pushed a man to build something meaningful becomes weaker. This is why many men feel a strange lack of motivation in modern life. They have ambition in theory, but the fire behind that ambition is gone, because the very energy that once fueled ambition is being released constantly. Historically, many traditions warned about this, not because pleasure itself was evil, but because uncontrolled desire weakens discipline. A man who cannot control his impulses becomes predictable. He follows whatever urge appears in the moment. He seeks what feels good instead of what creates growth. And over time, that pattern reshapes his character. His focus becomes shorter. His patience becomes weaker. His ability to sit with difficult work begins to disappear. Meanwhile, the men who learn to control that impulse experience something different. Instead of constantly releasing their energy through lust, they direct it toward training, toward work, toward building something meaningful. The same force that drives desire begins driving ambition. Instead of chasing stimulation, they chase mastery. And over time, that creates a massive difference between men. One man becomes weaker with every indulgence. The other becomes stronger with every act of discipline. The difference is not talent. It is control. Because the strongest man is not the one who has no desires. The strongest man is the one who can command them. And once a man learns to control lust instead of being controlled by it, he begins to reclaim the energy required to build a powerful life. At some point, a man begins to see the pattern. He begins to notice that every time he chooses pleasure without control, something inside him becomes weaker. His focus slips. His discipline fades. His ambition becomes inconsistent. And slowly, he realizes something important. The problem was never the world around him. It was the habits he was feeding inside himself. Pleasure is not the enemy, but chasing pleasure constantly is. Because every time a man follows impulse instead of purpose, he trains his mind to escape discomfort. And the moment a man begins escaping discomfort, he loses the very ability required to build a powerful life. Look at any man who has built something meaningful. A business, a career, a strong body, a respected reputation. None of those things were created through comfort. They were built through long periods of effort, through boredom, through discipline, through the ability to keep working when nothing exciting was happening. But the man who constantly chases pleasure loses the ability to sit with that process. He wants stimulation. He wants instant reward. He wants progress to feel good immediately. And when it doesn't, he walks away. This is why so many men remain stuck. Not because they lack potential, but because they never learn to control their impulses. They chase what feels good today, instead of building something powerful tomorrow. But the moment a man begins to understand the cost of chasing pleasure, something changes. He becomes more aware of his impulses. He stops reacting automatically. Instead of asking, what feels good right now, he begins asking a different question. What will make me stronger? That shift changes everything, because the man who learns to control his desires becomes calm, focused, disciplined. Instead of leaking his attention and energy in every direction, he begins directing it toward his work, toward his training, toward becoming someone capable of creating a life he is proud of. And over time, that discipline compounds. His focus becomes deeper. His presence becomes stronger. His ambition becomes clearer. While other men continue chasing pleasure, he begins building power. And eventually, the difference between those two lives becomes impossible to ignore. One man is always entertained. The other is always progressing. One man feels comfortable. The other becomes capable. Because the real secret of powerful men has never been that they have fewer desires. It is that they refuse to let those desires control them. They understand the cost of chasing pleasure, and once a man understands that cost, he stops wasting his life paying for it.